you're running your own business, and then you're this great businessman and all this. But this is really fascinating because a lot of these muscle magazines and online don't really get deeper into it of what the athletes do and what they think and how complex they are. And what an interesting stories. And you were also, I think, a police officer at one point, right? So you have all these different jobs and layers and levels and interests and all this stuff. So it's really great. And Victor, thank you very much also for your support and social media and everything that you have given me for about the mask situation. I mean, it's crazy that when we women argue about this stuff. But anyway, here we are. I mean, you know, the corona situation has been very challenging for bodybuilding also, not just for the rest of the world, but for our sport. Because as promoter, you don't know what you're allowed to do. And the laws change all the time. So we were kind of like planning on something, then we had to postpone it from March to now September. And finally we were clear that we were allowed to have 2,000 people in the audience tomorrow. So that was clear. So we only could have half or less than half of the audience that we normally have. And of course I want to apologize to all the people that couldn't get in because they wanted to get in because there's such great enthusiasm. So we want to say thank you to all of you that have come and that have supported the Arnold Classic. And we want to say thank you to all of the athletes that have been on stage that inspire me every day when I work out. And thank you also for the great job that you're doing. And I know that you have one more question for me.
One more. Well, welcome to your show, clearly. Now, do you remember all the way back, it was only the second year of the Arnold Classic when Mike Ashley won, but when you think back, do you remember those moments on stage with some of the early winners like Mike?
I do remember some of the things because I think that every bodybuilder has something unique. If it is the pose off, or if it is a certain pose that really closes the deal and all of that stuff. He was always a great poser, so that was his big thing always. Because he was not the most massive guy, but he was the greatest poser. So this is, I think the action is a lot of it in that combination of symmetry, of size, muscle separation, definition, and the performance, so that you can show all of this quality that you have. Because without being able to show it, and without being able to pose, and to hold a pose for long enough a time, so that everyone in the audience can see the pose, and the tricep, and the bicep, and the brachialis, and the intercostals, and the serratus, and the lower calves, and the upper calves, and the outside calves, and the inside calf. Oh, you may be able to see all that, but you can't see it if bodybuilders, which so many times they make the mistake of moving from one pose too fast and not really showing to the audience what they got. Because they have a lot, especially the bodybuilders today. I mean, wow, they are big, and they're defined, and they have this muscle separations. And then, I mean, I am sitting there and I'm with my mouth open like, oh my God. I have wished having deltoids like that. It's just incredible, and the kind of size, the kind of stuff that people, the bodybuilders do. But I just feel like they don't hold the pose long enough, and then when they hold the pose long enough, then they start shaking. Now what the hell is going on here? Why are we shaking? Are you afraid on stage or something like that? Or maybe you didn't practice enough? Well, then that's terrible. You know, because you can't be a champion if you haven't practiced enough the posing. It should be easy. That's why so many of the guys, I don't understand that either, why so many of the guys are grinding their teeth today when they pose. Why do they have to make a most muscular pose and go like, why? Who are you trying to kind of threaten with your teeth? What is that all about? I mean, you can have a strained face, but what is the teeth? What is this kind of like, every pose is like, you know, all this stuff. So there's certain things I don't understand. Maybe I haven't done the research, but I will talk about it tomorrow some more when we do the broadcast, because we're going to broadcast the whole thing, you know, the whole bodybuilding show, so that the world can see it. And I think it's good to go back in history a little bit to talk about Steve Reeves. Steve Reeves always looked so relaxed in his face, so beautiful. Or Jack Dellinger, who won Mr. Universe, I think, in 1956, if I'm not mistaken. And or Clancy Ross. You know, these guys, they all had such a good look in the face, and they looked so natural and so casual while they were doing their pose. Even, you know, John Grimek was another master of posing. So this is, to me, I always idolize that, and I think that bodybuilders, that they should kind of strive towards that kind of perfection and relax the face. Show that you're happy to have the greatest body in the world. Show that you're happy to show it to the thousands of people what you have trained for this whole year.
Now, Cedric, note to self, don't clench the teeth when you hit the most muscular, okay? Here we go.
Listen, I'm so glad you brought that up, sir. I can remember when I turned pro in 2009, and one of my goals was to try to represent the style of bodybuilding that I fell in love with. And I wanted to pose that way, and I wanted to have my presentation and my performance reflect that. And when I'm, you know, doing these twisted poses and these different angles and smiling, you know, so many times I was told, Cedric, it's not the 70s and 80s. Quit trying to look pretty. You need to dominate the stage. You need to be more aggressive. You sit up there smiling, acting like, you know, you're not trying your hardest. And the judges need to see that you're giving it everything you got. But what I wanted to try to do was present a beautiful physique. And I wanted it to look, you know, pleasant to see versus trying to look aggressive. So I'm glad you brought that up. Glad to see the classic physique guys and what they're doing. And because that gives us a look back in the past at the way things were. You know, even at one time, I tried to do my quarter turns relaxed, fully relaxed the way y'all used to. And I got my ass kicked that show. You know, because back then, you do your relax, and I read that in your encyclopedia, you relax your body completely because the first thing the judges want to see, we talked about this earlier, they want to see your body structure and make sure that you have good body structure before we move on into the muscularity portion of the competition. But yeah, I got my ass beat for doing that.
Well, yeah, clearly the posing has changed. Sometimes not for the better. But Arnold, you've got to be impressed with the classic division because it has brought back some of that old style mentality and the look. Chris Bumstead, the current Olympian champ, very much epitomizes that look. And it's reflective, obviously, in the new division. Now, that said, you've put your money where your mind is when it comes to posing because there are 2 awards this year on this stage. One in the men's open for the best poser, and classic physique now, a $10,000 reward for that.
Yeah, I think that people should get a special trophy for best posing, and that's why we also created a special trophy for most muscular. Because I think that the judges should feel comfortable to give that athlete that they feel has the most muscles, the most muscular trophy, and the winning trophy. But not necessarily winning the Arnold Classic or the Mr. Olympia. So they should feel comfortable that you'll be giving away 2 awards. One is, it's like in gymnastics. They give specific awards for specific talent. And I want the most muscular man on the stage to get this trophy that represents Franco Colombo. It's a Franco Colombo sculpture that I have commissioned by an Italian artist. And there's a double bicycle, it's wonderful, because Franco was not known for his size of biceps, but I mean, when he did it, he looked so fantastic because his lats were so huge, and his deltoids, and pectoral muscles and all that stuff. It was just really spectacular. So it was a great pose, great stature, and his sculptor did a great job. So we're going to give that out as most muscular, and then there will be cash prizes and a trophy for the person that has the best posing routine. So it's really good to give specific things. I remember that when I was competing, I used to get I go home with 5 trophies. You know, there was like a trophy for your weight class or height class. Then there was a trophy for the overall winner. Then there was a trophy for best legs, a trophy for best chest, a trophy for best back, and a trophy for best poser, for most muscular. So, I mean, I didn't win all of them, some of those areas, but the bottom line was, I went home sometimes with 3-4 trophies, 5 trophies, the most was 5 trophies one time I went home. So they don't do that anymore, but I think they should, because I think that everyone has their specialty areas, and they should get rewarded for for those special areas. Like if someone has an extraordinary arm, but maybe the arm is too big for his calves and so there's no match together, then you should get at least the trophy for having the best, most muscular arms. Why not? So people should have trophies and have their shelves lined up with trophies to show, to kind of, get a reward for the effort that they put in.
Well, Arnold, it's great that we brought up some of those old classic games, and those are some of the guys that you grew up watching, the Jack Dellingers and Steve Reeves and Grimmick, and some of those greats. One of those gentlemen, unfortunately, we just lost, I understand, yesterday or today, and that's Leon Brown. And I wanted to make sure that we recognize Leon. Now, for those who don't know, if you've ever read Pumping Iron, the book, Leon Brown is prominently displayed throughout the book. Great bodybuilder back in his day, but I'm sure you've got some fond memories.
Yeah, I heard it say news today that Leon Brown died. And it breaks my heart, it really does. Because he was such a wonderful man, so shy, quiet, he never spoke. And Frank, I would say to him always, Leon. He says, what? He says, shut up. And Leon didn't talk for an hour, he was sitting in the back seat. But Frank would just lighten up the atmosphere, he would just make him talk like that, to say something funny. And we would go up to the Muscular Rock together in California, and we would do posing practices, and he was just wonderful, going to the beach and working out and traveling around. And he came every year, to the Arnold Classic with his wonderful wife. And so then you hear that a few months ago, that he had cancer. And I stayed in touch with him. And then now, today I found out that he passed away, just terrible. So anyway, my thoughts are with his family, and I really, really will miss Leon Brown. He was a wonderful, wonderful man and great bodybuilding champion.
If you get a chance to check out Pumping Iron in the book, he's the very first picture in the book. When you turn it over, there's a very casual shot of Leon Brown with I think it was the subway sign behind him. Fantastic. It was great to see him here every single year. He never missed an Arnold. Always came, always great to see him here supporting. When you think back to when you first started bodybuilding, I know everybody knows that Reg Park was one of your early idols. Did you look up to a Steve Reeves or a Grim? Like, who did you look at when it came to the presentation of posing the physique?
Well, as I've described it several times in my books, I had all of those guys on my bedroom wall. Right where my bed was, I was lying there next to the wall. My bed, there was like some steel frame bed, an old-fashioned kind of little bed that I had. And the wall was filled with boxes, with weightlifters, with bodybuilders, and some of the bodybuilders was like Steve Reeves and Reg Park and Lou Degny, was Mark Forrest, and Gordon Mitchell, and all the guys, Brad Harris, all those old-time guys that made it into the movie business, and at the same time were, really looking fantastic. Paul Winter, Sergio Oliva, all of those guys were hanging on my wall. As a matter of fact, I mentioned that story many times, that my mother was so concerned that I had all this kind of semi-naked man on my wall, and all the other boys had girls on the wall. There's something off with me a little bit. So she called the doctor, and she asked me, what's going on here? Why does my son have only men on the wall? And she was just freaking out. But he straightened out, and he told her that this is okay. He's just idolizing them and gets inspiration from these characters and so on.
So last year, we had Sergio Jr., obviously competing against his father many, many years ago, and another icon in the sport. You were able to present him an award of the best poser presentation, which had to be pretty special. How was it? Bring me back to that moment when you're actually giving out an award to the man's son that you competed against.
Well, there's a lot of things that goes through your mind, because number one, it takes you back to the days when I used to visit Sergio Oliva in Chicago, and we were training in the Duncan YMCA together. And that's the kind of relationship we had. We were competitors, but he was very, very sweet and very welcoming. And I just came over from Germany, from Munich, and he was like having me over to his house, for his apartment for dinner. and his wife cooked and all that, so it was really fantastic. So then all these memories and competing with him, and what an extraordinary body that he had, these huge triceps and lats that wouldn't stop. I mean, he was like a fierce competitor and a great personality and all this stuff. So then you have that, you think about all this stuff. Then I think about it, how wonderful it is being a father myself, how great it is when your children kind of follow your footsteps. You know, because sometimes they go off in the totally opposite direction just because they're rebels and they're fighting against something to prove a point in one way or the other, whatever it means. But it's so nice that when you see your children, that they want to work out, they want to stay in shape, they maybe are not as intense in working out, but then you have someone, a son, like Sergio Olivia Jr., that goes all out, just like his father did, trains hours and hours every day to become a champion, and then starts winning trophies and starts really going up to that level. And now look at his body. I mean, he could at any given time win the Arnold Classic, he can win the Mr. Olympia. I mean, he really has done such an extraordinary job, and it's much more difficult today, obviously, to win those awards, because there's so many bodybuilders around the world now that are getting really gigantic and fantastic. And so I really admire him, I have to say, a lot, because of having stepped in there and doing the same thing as his father, and feeling good about it, and feeling proud about it. And you know, that's what I see when I see him competing and when I give him the trophy. And I told him that, I said, I'm really proud of you. And I said, your father, if he would be alive today, I guarantee you that he would just kiss you and would be so happy that you are doing what he did and that you appreciate that. So that's what goes through my mind when I see it. So I think it's great when children kind of follow the footsteps of their parents and admire them and present them.
Arnold, back in 2001, the current and reigning three-time Olympia champ, Ronnie Coleman, decided to throw his hat and step on an Arnold stage. When he wins the show and you come out, obviously you get to see him face to face. What did you think of Ronnie and just where the physiques had gone by 2001?
Well, it was clear that it was a whole new dimension in bodybuilding. You know, it was the weights, the size, the weights that they were lifting then was just more than we did. The size of the muscles were bigger. It was just a whole other level, I thought. And I was, you know, kind of happy, even though with this one, this kind of odd thing. I mean, in one way you feel like, I want to make sure that I would say Mr. Olympia 7 times, and there's the record number of Mr. Olympias and all that. So then someone goes and wins the 8th time. And then he says it is a 1. That is actually great, someone broke a record. That's what the sport is all about. So I was happy for Ronnie that he won it the 8th time, but then me, at the same time I was pissed off that my record was gone. So it's a bit of this kind of combination. I don't know if I explained it the right way, but it's one of those combination feelings where you just congratulate him and you hug him and you tell him this is fantastic. But at the same time you go like, God damn it. my record is gone or something like that. I mean, I was very happy, and it couldn't have happened to a better guy. And you know, I was always a big fan of Ronnie Coleman and his great training, and also his great way of communicating. You have such a great way of communicating, meaning it's always one thing to be a champion, but it's another thing to communicate and create more champions. See, our job is not just to have a lot of followers, but our job is to create champions, to create more champions. I loved it when Lee Haney said, Arnold, when I saw you on that stage in the Arnold Classic there, I said, I was way up there in the balcony. And I said, one day I want to be on that stage. So he got inspired, and then he became, of course, Mr. Olympia and won the Arnold Classic and all this stuff. So it's really great to see that. So, and you do that so well, Ronnie. The way you communicate. As a matter of fact, everyone here on this stage is doing such a great job, because that's our responsibility, is to go and to take what we learn from our workouts and from our training and working out together with other people and so on, and then communicate with the mass out there, to the 10, 15-year-old kids, or to the 50-year-olds that want to get into training, and inspire them and help them and show them the inside tricks and diet ideas and all of this kind of food supplements and all that stuff. And also you're producing this great food supplement line, the Ronnie Coleman line is the name, right? It's fantastic. So I think that you really are a great inspiration. And everyone, I want to say this to everyone here on stage, each one of you is a great inspiration. You've no idea because we don't see it. We don't see the people out there that are looking at the social media today and see your bodies and your muscular physiques, or the magazines they're reading, old magazines, new magazines, and they get inspired by us of what we say and what we do. And that's, I think, our job is to create more champions and to promote the sport and to make sure that everyone is working out, no matter what. That is our that's what we say about
athlete to that. Ronnie Coleman has become the second most imitated bodybuilder on the planet Earth. Clearly you're number one. But Ronnie, he's carved his own niche with catchphrases. Yeah, buddy. Lightweight. Ain't nothing but a peanut. You see it on t-shirts. You go to gyms all across the world. 130-pound guys are, yeah, buddy. It's absolutely crazy, but it's kind of fun because you can tell that bodybuilding is infiltrated everywhere these days. I've heard on ESPN, people put out, your catchphrases. So I think it's pretty cool. But we finally got somebody else because you've had the market for years.
Absolutely, I think it is great. And I just want to add that it is so important that we also think always about people that are left behind. Because there's a lot of people that have the talent to become champions. There's a lot of people that have the money to go and buy the food, buy the steaks, buy the eggs, to go and buy the food supplements, the proteins and all that stuff. But then there's a lot of people out there that cannot afford to join a gym. There's a lot of people out there that cannot afford a protein bar or to make a protein drink. There's a lot of people that are not coordinated enough. I remember when I trained Special Olympians, that had difficulties getting coordinated and doing gymnastics or doing weight training and stuff like that because they're intellectually challenged. Their balance sometimes is off. So there's so many different kind of people that are left behind. And the reason I'm mentioning is because we have to think about how do we pull them along? How do we include them into our bodybuilding movement? How do we give them a chance so they can work out or have food and all this stuff? I just came from a fundraiser across the town about after-school programs. And in after-school programs, we realized during the pandemic, we didn't just teach kids how to do their homework and how to do tutoring and exercises in the after-school programs, but also because people always said we realized they didn't have the money to buy food because a lot of people were laid off. So we had to go and start raise money to feed their families. But that's what it's all about, is how do we help each other and recognize the fact that we're all equal and that we all should have the same opportunities and same rights. And in exercising, that's more important than ever. Because this gives a chance to us to liberate everybody, because everyone wants to be strong, everyone wants to be fit, everyone wants to get a big bicep and stuff like that. So this is why I always inspire everybody, gym owners, to bring in people sometimes that can afford it, or to train Special Olympians, or people that are physically handicapped or intellectually handicapped or whatever it is. So that everyone is included. So that's, I think, is something that should be very important to all of us. Let's all work together. We are the greatest movement, the bodybuilding movement. We've been growing over the years, over the decades. I'm so proud of how far we have come that today you cannot even go to a hotel anywhere in the world that doesn't have a bodybuilding gym, a weight room, a fitness room. No military base that doesn't have a weight room. Every YMCA, every sports field, every high school, every university, physical therapy centers, no matter where you go, there is a weight room. That's how far we have come. Isn't that fantastic? This is what we're going to do.